Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I welcome good friend of mine back onto the podcast. I'm not even going to say how many times now because we're racking the numbers up. Pete Komalafe, Conversation of Money on YouTube, and you can probably guess we are talking about money. We're going to be talking about tax, Dubai, how to make money, rich mindset, poor mindset, and also then we're going to be talking about how to make an active plan. Or is it too late for the UK? Is it doomed? Well, hopefully not, because I'm still living in the UK. Pete, welcome back, my good friend.
Oh, cheers, mate. Thanks for having me again.
Pleasure. Honestly, never a chore, always a pleasure with you, mate. And what I do want to do is jump straight in, as I just said there.
hmm
Do we move to Dubai? Is that the solution? Is that the money a scapegoat to keep what we earn?
I feel like that's been like the main solution that a lot of people come to over the past. Certainly, if you're paying attention to social media, right? I mean, I've been going to Dubai for almost 10 years now. We've got friends out there. The development there is insane. It's not 100% tax free anymore because if you register a company, you've got to pay 9% tax now. But personal income completely tax free. It is a major city. It is more expensive, but I think the main attraction of Dubai is the tax friendliness of the taxes you pay, but more than anything else, just the lifestyle, the infrastructure, everything out there is amazing. I still think there's maybe a part of society that believes that it's a little bit of a backward society. You need to go there to know. Trust me. It feels like the most viable option right now for a lot of
That's what I
people.
hear. That's what I hear from a lot of my friends who have also been out there as well, where they've come back and they have said, honestly, Aaron, we were like that once upon a time where we were like, is this a bit gimmicky? Is it kind of just what everyone's generically saying? Everyone's getting the
Yeah,
business class. It's very photogenic, but actually they've come back and they've even said, I'm not joking, Aaron, we're seriously considering moving our family out to
yeah.
Dubai because it's almost opportunity is everywhere. They're so
It's
quick.
very business friendly out there. Very, very business friendly out there. I mean, I remember the first time we went, we probably went for the first time in 2000. It's been about 10 years. I think this year's the 10th year. And I remember saying to my missus, it was like, where should we go this Christmas? And I was like, you're not going to be able to go on the beach and wear a bikini. That's on it. That was honestly what I thought. Couldn't have been more wrong. They
Yeah.
are so inviting, so welcoming. And look, you've got to obviously respect the rule of law and the things that are their customs, as always. I think as English people, sometimes we don't necessarily do that very well. But as long as you respect their customs, you'll be completely fine. And that isn't to say that it's completely 100% perfect. It isn't. Like any place that you're going to go to, there will be a side to things that you may not necessarily appreciate or like. But that's the same thing if we're here in the UK. But I think for the quality of life and just the things that they're building out there, it's just literally, mate, the possibilities for if you're a business owner with a business out there is huge. It's massive. And they welcome it as well.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think it's so welcoming, and people have got this idea that perhaps it's just an scapegoat. But actually, I think there's a reality behind this that it could be a totally different life. And I think if you are in business, certainly from what I keep hearing, is that Aaron, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
Like lifestyle. I think the only thing is, if you're from the UK, we like our seasons, right? Like I love the seasons, but I suppose the counter to that is there's nothing to say you can't come back to the UK for the holiday and to enjoy the winter here. But is it the
Well,
answer?
I made the mistake of going out there last year, like around Eid, which was August, September. Biggest mistake ever. I mean, we go there Christmas and the temperatures are probably about 30 degrees, which is bearable. Going in August, September, mate, you're hitting 45 degrees, mate. It is insufferable. But
Yeah,
a lot of the expats that live out there, so all of our friends that live out there, they will go because most of the time they're off work anyway. They just go traveling. They'll go into Europe, go into Australia, go into Thailand. I think it's quite a nice place to travel from as well if you want to visit the rest of the world. So yeah.
yeah. But the question is it the answer? I mean, the UK at the moment is so bad for its habits, its education, lack of the tax that is just tearing people apart. It's just, crippling us, pinching us left, right, and center. Is it the answer? Or, I interviewed Andrew Craig yesterday, and he was in agreement that it's becoming incredibly hard. But he also said on the back of that is that when things get tough, you've got to stick it through. And I don't know whether that's more of a is that more sort of an old school attitude to have? Because how much do you ride the wave and go through the tough times? I'm kind of like, at some point, when do you say this is taking the piss?
I don't know, mate. It really depends on the person, isn't it? I think everyone gets to a point where they're just like, I've had enough. Like, so I'll give you a prime example. Past month or so, I've been in hospital twice. And this is an example that a lot of people will be able to resonate with. You know, the second time it took me 12 hours to get into a bed. So bearing in mind, I'm in there with chest pains. I can't breathe. 12 hours is a long freaking time to be in a waiting, like literally in A&E, waiting with everybody else to be seen, and before you can get into a bed. And then I start thinking to myself, okay, maybe I need to pay for private medical insurance. And I'm like, hang on a second, I pay good taxes, I pay good national insurance contributions. Why should I have to shell out, thousands of pounds potentially on a private medical insurance just to be seen quicker in this kind of instance? I think everyone has their kind of like thresholds. It feels like things aren't working here at the moment, but I do think that's a symptom of the times. Would everyone feel as negative about the way things are going here if we didn't have a cost of living crisis? If we didn't have inflation running rampant? Probably not, because it doesn't necessarily impact the financial shoestrings as much, right? But we're just in this, I guess, perfect storm of just everything feels like it's not working and everything's against us. So financially, people are feeling the pinch more, and the idea to get out and seek something new is always going to be appealing.
Yeah, and I feel like it's becoming miserable. I walk into Sainsbury's sometimes and they have it almost like right in front of your face where they have all the papers and the little lift up lids and they're all in a line and and it's all doom and gloom. And I feel that the UK has become, obviously there's so much media access now and we see so much of it, but I feel that everywhere you look, it's incredibly miserable and there's nothing good to be said about the UK anymore. The way that we operate things, whether that's financially or just, within the economy, it's just like shocking. But it seems to
But
be,
it is a mess, though. It is a bit of a
it
mess. But
seems to be getting worse.
having said that, though, mate, it's always been negative in the news. I
Yeah.
think now we just notice it more because of everything. Like when you feel it in your pocket and your day-to-day life isn't getting any better. And literally, the crazy thing is that even people who are earning well now are struggling. And that's a crazy thought. That's a crazy thought. If you think about the people who are earning, 100,000+ a year, now struggling, when you get to that level, you can then look at it and see, actually, what do the people at the bottom and in the middle of society feel like? What must it be like for them? And so you're going to notice that negative press even more because, mate, we are in dire, dire straits from an economic point of view. If this was personal finances, we would be bankrupt. But because we're governments, we can print money. Hey, it all seems to fix itself in some way. I mean, what is Labour going to do coming into power? I watched a news clip where this journalist was pressing and saying, "What are you going to do to fix things and make things better? Are you going to borrow more money or are you going to raise taxes? Because those are the two choices.
Yeah.
If you don't raise taxes, you have to borrow more money, increase our debt." Couldn't give a straight answer. Why? Because he doesn't have the foggiest idea what he's going to do, or he doesn't want to tell the truth. Because at this moment, mate, you tell me who wants to pay more tax.
Mm.
You tell me who wants to pay more tax right now, given the fact that everyone's under the squeeze.
Well, this is what's shocking about it. And this is where I'm kind of almost, just before we went live, I'm almost scratching my head thinking, what is the next few years? I'm not talking what does the next 5, 10 years hold? I'm talking about what do I do in the next couple of years? Because at some point we all have our threshold and we need to make a decision, which leads us nicely into, I suppose, the more relevant topic of the here and now. Like, what's the plan? We've spoken about this before, but what is the plan? And we do have more of a divide between the rich and poor, but let's go a little bit deeper than that. It's the rich and poor mindset first. You don't need to have the money in the bank to start making better decisions and have better habits. How do we have a huge lack of education. In fact, there is no education, right? And I don't think there ever will be, apart from independent, corporations or individuals like us that talk about it. I don't think that's the only way the education gets out there. But we do have a major split between the poor mindset and the rich mindset. How are we going to improve that? Does it improve, and what do we do? Because there's such a divide.
Mate, it needs to improve. It's an imperative that it does. What I've been noticing recently is that, and you'll probably know this as well from your TikTok, people are very, very happy just to blame anything else apart from the decisions that maybe they make. And
Mhm.
that isn't to kind of like say that people are making poor decisions and it's all your fault. Obviously, there are external factors that influence the limits to what you can do. But what I have a real problem with is giving up the power and just saying, oh, the government doesn't want us to do this and therefore you're not going to bother. I mean, like, that's really defeatist. I don't roll with people like that. I don't have time with people like that. I think mindset is everything. If it is true that the government wants us all to be dirt poor, then how are you making money on TikTok, mate? How am I turning over, £100,000 a year on YouTube? How is that possible?
Yeah.
Like, mindset is everything. If you think that you can't, yeah, you won't. You can't. If you think that you can, you will, because you'll find a way to do it. And I think fundamentally, because people feel disenfranchised, and I made a video that went out on YouTube yesterday talking about the top 1% of earners. And what I've noticed in my Instagram feed in the reels is a real jealousy and envy for people who earn in the top 1%.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, so let's really think about why that is. And the reason I believe is because people feel disempowered, disenfranchised. They don't feel capable of replicating that kind of success for themselves. And to that, you have to take charge and you have to figure out and be like, okay, so what did this person actually do?
Yeah.
How do I replicate what they've done? How do I learn? How do I, challenge myself and do something that's a little bit different? I think more people are coming around to that train of thought, but there's still a lot of people who just prefer to just blame other people for the problems that we're facing. And it's like, okay, it's not all your fault. There's only so much you can do, but control what you can control, because if you don't, you're lost.
Yeah, and I think to change your life, to have a bit of positive curiosity about you. You just said it there, to find out, to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Just before we did this podcast, Pete, I was on a live on TikTok, and this individual came on, and I was talking about taking action and changing your life. And someone literally came on and just said, "It's not that easy. You're so out of touch with reality." I couldn't have been more in touch with reality from my upbringing. I've just
Mm-hmm.
made a plan and executed it, just like your background. you know you weren't given anything, but it's the motion of that, having that curiosity, meeting the right people. Honestly, we've spoken about it so much, but I do feel it's so underestimated, the people that you network with and the people that you have conversations with and who you really learn from can change your entire life. It's so overlooked, and it frustrates me because someone who has no belief, doesn't think it's possible, thinks the world is incredibly tough and that, life is against them. You could change that whole perspective of that individual if they were around really driven people. They don't even have to be ultra successful. They just have to be wanting more.
But yeah, but that's the problem though, mate. And this is the thing that pisses me about people who think like that, right? They're looking at you based on where you are right now, not where you've come from, right?
Yeah.
So people will say this to me all the time. Yeah, it's all right for you. You've kind of like, you've done okay. But it's like, you tell me when I was sleeping on the streets, if I thought that maybe doing something like this would have been even possible.
Yeah.
I was in desperation. But in my head, I was like, it can't get any worse than this because I choose to be optimistic. And then with that kind of mindset, you then start to think, well, actually, I'm actually around the right people. Probably not. And one of the hardest things that I had to do was cut off all the boys that were holding me back, where we would go clubbing every weekend and drink and get girls and cause trouble, get into fights. And, what am I doing around these people? Like, what we did it. We've done it for a number of years now. Like, we can't continue to do this forever. So you have to make a conscious decision and be like, actually, you know what? Maybe I need to apply myself a little bit more. It's a choice. It's your choice. Nobody's going to make it for you. And if you're brave enough to make that choice, it's a step in the right direction. But the thing is, I've learned, for people who have the mindset to make that conscious decision, they'll repeat that habit because they are naturally curious and naturally wanting to progress. It's like the ocean. It's just momentum that you cannot account for. It's in you. It's driven inside you. But if you just placate and be like, oh, you know what? It's not that easy. Like, people are born with so many privileges in this country that people just don't understand. It just, it's one of the most annoying things that I witness all the time. Like, you live in a country which is relatively wealthy. At least you got benefits. Like, when I was in Nigeria, if you had no income, you're on your own, mate. No benefits. You figure it out, mate. You don't go to work. You're starving. The government's not going to pay your rent and pay your council tax. Nothing. Like, you get zero help. And then people say it's not that easy. At least you have a stepping stone. That is a stepping stone. Just believe in yourself.
I feel that people can be quite weak, and and they don't want to take accountability. You know, I'm listening to two books that one I just recommended on a TikTok live a minute ago, but one I'm listening to right now, which was also recommended to me, was Arnold Schwarzenegger's Be Useful. And that is all around, you know, he wasn't given a leg up, he wasn't given anything, but what he chose to do was make a choice and make a plan and then stick with it despite the odds against him, and also to have that vision and that belief. And he just stuck with it even when it was looking against him. He just told himself it's going to come to fruition, and he just moved every day towards that. And he said, it irritates me, and he said this in the book, and obviously, you know, he's a lot older, he's a lot wiser now, so you can, he sort of chuckles about it, but he said, you know, when people are overweight, he said, no one made them eat the donut. No one made them eat the burger. It was just a total lack of discipline because people are weak. And it's not until people get to the worst case scenario, they go, oh, I better change things because that got pretty bad. And
Mhm.
it's that point. And there's another book which is called I Know What to Do, So Why Don't I Do It, by Dr. Nick Hall, PhD. And that book breaks down the fact that we all know what to do. We all know that we should move more, eat less. We all know that we should be looking after our money and we should be investing wisely. We all know that we should be around good people to do good things. But people don't seem to do it. And it stems from a lack of discipline and the inability to make any necessary sacrifices, delayed gratification for the long-term gain. So it does make you question people who aren't where they want to be. Do they just lack responsibility, accountability, and can that be changed? Like, are some people just a lost cause?
I think it's a good question. I think there's an element to things. I mean, I don't think it's black and white, first and foremost. I think some people, yes, there may be a lack of discipline, but underlying that, I truly believe that people just don't feel as though they have the ability to replicate somebody else's success. And I think that mindset is what you need to crack first and foremost, because I think unless you take that first step, you're never going to know. And discipline is really, really important. But in order to apply that discipline, you need to have taken a few steps to know what you need to apply the discipline to. So if you can't even get to the point where you're deciding, right, this is what I need to do, or this is my way out or my path forward, it's hard to apply that discipline because there's no outlet to focus it on. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I think people struggle with, because, you know, mate, it's hard, mate. Social media tells you to be successful, you need to be driving a Bentley and wearing a Rolex. I mean, come off it, like, seriously.
Yeah.
Get out of it with that. But that's the message that these kids are being told right now. And with that high level of expectation, and going back to the way things are run here, can you believe, like, to buy a home in the UK, if you're in London, £100,000 is not enough? Come on, like, dude, like,
Yeah.
it feels like the barriers are insurmountable. And it's that, how do you key into actually this is possible, that mindset? How do you give them something where they can focus that discipline to it?
I think that, yeah, I think that's a valid point. I think what's incredibly hard, and even for us, you know, when the benchmark now is so high, I suppose you lack the belief that you could ever reach the benchmark that is forever moving and is so far away now for so many. You know, unless you have incredible success and you sell a company for multi millions that you can buy anything you want, it's so far away. So I suppose the belief becomes a little bit harder. But I suppose that's where good planning and bringing yourself back to almost like a realistic plan. So working in segments, working by quarters, you know, this is what I want to do by second half of the year. I think the problem we're in at the moment with social media is it tells you you should be a certain level, but it doesn't explain
Give
how
you the
hard.
steps.
It doesn't
Yeah.
give you any steps.
Doesn't give the steps. Yeah.
And to enjoy the steps. I think that's the other thing is too, you know, small wins you should be celebrating, right? It doesn't tell us the small wins. You know, if you manage to make £500 profit in a little side hustle, never will it tell you to, you know, to go and celebrate that. It'll only celebrate.
You'll have some dude telling you you're a loser, you're a broker because you only made 500 quid.
Dude, I've got some content which already went out. I don't know if you've seen these videos. They crack me up. The videos that are like, don't go anywhere. If you're a broke teenager, this is the best site. Hang on. If you're a broke teenager, you're meant to be broke. You're a teenager living at home. Like, isn't it so manipulative? Like these types of content of if you're a broke teenager, like this.
Yeah, but that's all about algorithm hacking, mate. That's all about
Is
can you grab the attention within that first 1 second? And so therefore it becomes so hyperbolic. It annoys me to no end. It's like,
yeah.
just be authentic, just speak to people. But again, I don't know that this is where algorithms, and that's the downside to it that I don't like.
This podcast was sponsored by the employment breakout program, How to Fire Your Boss and Replace Your Income. If you want a life of purpose, one with time freedom and financial stability, head to the description below where you can join a free introduction webinar to learn how business could change your life. But dude, this is, besides that being a clickbait algorithm plug, the long-term effects is you're getting teenagers watching that there now really should be a curriculum in schools to say, by the way, we now have to do a lesson to remind you, year 10s and year 11s, as you enter in the big world, you're not a broke teenager, by the way. Now have to remind you because you're seeing these videos and you think you're not achieving enough. You haven't even left school yet. Like you're not even prepared for the world. You're not even mentally developed by the age of 20, really. So it's so damaging, and this is why.
I'll tell you what I saw the other day, mate.
Easy.
This is on that point. I can't remember. I think it was this kid was like 12 or 14 years old, and he was doing like this video diary of how he was going to become a millionaire by the age of 20. And I'm like, you're 12, 14, mate. Like the ambition and the mindset to be able to do that, number one, is very, very good. But at the same time, you're 12, 14 years old. At the same time, there needs to be some kind of balance between, yes, you're ambitious, yes, you want to do side hustles, yes, you want to do this, but how damage is it that that is your main focus at 12, 14 years old? We don't get the balance of this right sometimes.
But mate, I duet, and I've even got my son to do duets of people when they're going, a side hustle a 10-year-old could do. And then I'll do a duet saying, I have a 10-year-old, he would not be able to do that. And I'll just bring the reality back on it because that's not realistic. And I think, yeah, there is a balance. I think it's healthy in terms of like learning at that age when you can understand finances, good decisions, fundamentals. Like I think that's super important. But yeah, there's an element of, okay, still be a kid, right? You don't need to jump to 20 years old at 12. I think that there is a fine line and a balance to be had. Now, look, in terms of changing your mindset, it is a process, right? I think it's a long process and it's made up of several components. But in a world at the moment where, there are going to be a huge amount of people that are looking at other people, like you just mentioned, they'll look at the success of someone on social media, but they won't look back over the years that has gone unseen. How do you change someone's sort of mindset around it? How can you really sort of impose on someone and say, look, you just need to educate. Like stop hating on success, because in the UK we need to talk about it more, but we don't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that you can impose like someone to change their mindset. I think that has to be intrinsically driven because like in behavioral psychology, they talk about intrinsic motivations, extrinsic motivations. And what has been proven is that in order for someone to change a mindset or develop new habits, what you need is therefore to be a intrinsic motivation to do so. So something where you're doing it because it means something to you. You have a solid reason why. And I don't think you can change someone's mindset without that intrinsic motivation. And, I coach from a financial point of view. And oftentimes when I meet with people, I'm like, okay, look, so what do you actually want the next 2, 4, 4, 5 years to look like? And then we can zoom out to go 10, 15 years. People have no freaking idea, mate. People just have no idea. It's like you're just going through life, just blindly just following the wind. Like, where are you going to end up? Where are you going? Most people don't have a clear idea. And I think in order for you to change your mindset, to be able to be focused on something, you need to have an idea of where you're going, what you want to get to, what you want to achieve. And unfortunately, people just don't have a very clear idea of it. They can be very vague and be like, oh, in 5 years' time, I want to be earning this much money. But it's like, how?
Yeah.
How are you going to earn that much money? And when you talk about earning that kind of money, doing what exactly? And how are you going to earn it? All of those technicalities people often don't pay attention to.
Do you know what's interesting as well? You talking about this really reminds me of this conversation I had yesterday, and I have quite often is around we're struck with the 10K figure. Yeah. And this has kind of become a default figure that we see all the time, £10,000 a month. Now, look, money's a great thing. And, earning more money can solve a lot of problems and it gives you resources, right? But this 10K figure that is floating about, it's heavy out there, right? It's on all the marketing It's super clickbait. And it's really interesting when you actually ask someone, okay, you're saying you want this 10K or you'd love to earn 10K or it's not realistic, but what's your perfect figure? Like, what's the figure that makes you happy? What brings you a level of contentment? And people don't really understand that number. Now, the average UK salary is 1,600 a month or like 27
Hmm.
grand a year. And if people are bringing home £1,600 and you ask someone, you're talking about 10K, but have you actually worked out how much makes you comfortable and what gives you a good life? Because normally that number's probably, £3,162.
Hmm.
And that's so much more achievable. And I feel like, again, we're missing the bridge. We're missing the in-between. We're just seeing the big end goal, the big number, and that's what everyone wants, but they have no idea how to get there. But yet they're overlooking, actually, if I only brought in another 2 grand, that would make my life incredibly comfortable.
Hmm.
I feel like
But social media is telling them that even if you're earning that 3,162, which will make you comfortable, it's not enough. That's what
brokey.
social media is driving at people. You're a brokey. A few people have sent me a reel that is circulating Instagram right now. 35-year-old on 35 grand a year saying he doesn't feel like a man. Like you're earning for London, I think that's about the average, but you're 35 years old, you're earning £35,000 a year, and you're saying you don't feel like a man. And when you delve deep into the reasons why, can't buy property, I'm single, I can't date because I can't go to Sexy Fish or Hakkasan or whatever. And I'm like, okay, maybe you're picking the wrong place and you're looking after the wrong type of female. But
Yeah.
that's by the by. But that's what social media is telling him he needs to be doing, right? So I agree with you. Like you need to have a really good sense of self.
Yeah.
What's your happy medium? What's your happy place? Because at least if you get there, then you can plot to build from there. And everything that you learn from going from 1,600 to what £3,162, that's repeatable. What you learn in that journey is invaluable and
Yeah.
it's repeatable. That can catapult you to 5. That can catapult you to 6. It could catapult you to the 10. But people just assume if you get to 10, everything's going to be sweet. And it's like, no, mate. Like, you'll probably waste more money. You'll probably succumb to more pressure because you will need to do this. And then all of a sudden, once you get there, you've got to keep that up. And that in itself is a freaking pressure that nobody tells you about because now you're here. You don't want to go back down here. Nobody wants to regress. So now you're at 10. It's like, oh, I need to get to 15. I need to get to 20. What does that do for your mental health?
When you reach the top, it's very hard to go back.
Yep.
And that's the truth, right? No one really knows their contentment, no, as in their number that will bring them to that contentment phase or stage of their life. But this is something that's really interesting, right? Is the value of money. As you get older, I think your value of money changes. And I've also interviewed Matt Fidesz last week, who's worth, I don't know, between 120, 150. uh, does huge amounts in turnover in his business. And he said, to be honest with you, when I went past 10 million, I had everything.
Hmm.
He said, in hindsight, if I could go back, I'd have capped it at that. He said, because there's nothing I couldn't have. He said, I've got the mansion, I've got the Lambos, I've had the Ferraris, I've had the helicopters. I go anywhere in the world. Our family and I can jet off to wherever we want. He said, now what I have, over 100 million's worth, is nothing but a pain. He said, I
Mm.
have the largest, he said, privately owned real estate company in the south of the UK. I'm the largest privately landlord, basically. He said it's nothing but a headache. He said, but if I could go back, I wouldn't have done all this. He said, because now it's just the solving problems are on such a scale, it never ends. He
Mm.
said, I'm still very blessed. I get everything I want, but the problems, you have no idea. He said, like, as soon as I get off this podcast, the whole day, I'm just trying to sort out problems that I don't want to sort out. So
Mm.
there is a level, but money, let's just talk about money for a second, is that it's not the physical paper. We've spoken about this before. It's not flashing it. It's the time freedom. What I love, and then I'd love to hear how you enjoy it, is, for example, after this podcast, I'm probably going to go on a lovely 10-mile bike ride because I've got London to Brighton coming up. I need to get my miles in, and I'm able to do that because I don't have a lot of outgoings. I have high income, and I'm just very frugal. And I don't spend money. I wear all of my own gym clothing. I'm wearing Primark joggers again. I don't spend money, but I have this time freedom, like this abundance of, if I just want to sit about doing nothing, not that I'm that guy, but if I fancy just sitting there, or Pete, do you want to jump on a bit of Call of Duty? I'm ready to go. We can do that. it's time freedom, it's resources, right?
It is. And like the great thing you said there is you have really good control of it. And this is the trap that a lot of people fall into. You've got really good control over your finances, as have I. I have zero debt apart from my mortgage, and this mortgage is relatively small. It could be paid off in 2 years if you wanted it to be. On average, I do probably about 12, 15,000 pounds a month. My outgoings are minuscule. I don't have to work if I don't want to for the rest of the day. I like what I do. I enjoy my work. So I'm going to do some work. I'm going to work on some projects, but I could clock off at four o'clock if I wanted to. I have the choice to be able to do that. But that is only possible if you have a good control over. You're not fucking buying stupid, dumb shit that you don't fucking need. Like, come on. Like, it's understanding you and understanding where your happy place is and understanding, right, I'm happy with this level of existence. And to a certain extent, being arrogant enough to say, actually, all this social media stuff that they're hearing, yeah, I hear it, but I'm cool. And that isn't to say that you're settling for less. If you want to be a millionaire, go for it. Like, for me, it's not really a big thing. I could invest in property, and that's something I'm going to be doing this year, not in the UK, but abroad. Over the next 4 or 5 years, I'll get to a millionaire status easy. I could probably do it in 2 years, but it's not the main driver for me. I would rather have good quality of life, a little bit of choice around what it is that I do. I do something that I enjoy on a day-to-day basis that gives me purpose, makes me feel fulfilled. When I was working in Canary Wharf, earning really good money, being taxed to the freaking nines, but working for people who just weren't appreciative of the work that I was doing. It's like, hang on a second, you're moaning at me for making 8% a year on your fucking £750,000 portfolio. Like, where I'm from, I'd kill for
Yeah.
£750,000, let alone the 8% you made on it for doing nothing. Like,
Yeah.
we have to have a sense of reality sometimes around, look, yeah, the outside world is, the expectation is this, but what does your internal world actually look like, and what do you want for yourself? I think that is missed too often.
I think it's so healthy when you can sideline and disconnect from social media, not get caught up in the emotions and the expectation and the comparison and what your life should be like based on a highlight reel. And you can live a life of contentment, not spend too much, live frugal, live on less, invest the rest, as they say, and really focus on actually what makes you happy. That's like that's the top level. So many people at the moment where people are unhappy and suffering from mental health issues. If you can be in a state where you don't have a huge amount of money worries, if any at all, from smart decisions and not keeping up with the bloody Joneses because they got no money,
Mm-hmm.
you can live a life of contentment, but have time freedom. It's as we've just been talking about, it's an absolute blessing to wake up. I love what I do, as do you, but to be able to manage your own diary, you value and respect yourself because you're not, as you just said, you're not in a bloody job where someone's just taking the piss out of you and there's no
Mm-hmm.
respect there, and they don't truly value you as an individual. You're there to serve a purpose. That's where it's at. And I think I feel that if you can just disconnect from social media, understand that it is a platform for portraying a life where someone wants you to buy into this, this false reality, and really get to grips with what you've got going on. You'll put yourself in a 1% of just, like a healthy mental state. You
Yep,
haven't even got to be in the
100%.
1%. I just feel that being happier and more content, you're winning above 99% of
That
the
should be the
population.
life goal, though, mate.
Yeah.
The life goal should be, how do you get to a point where you feel happy and content?
Mm.
Because those are the real winners. And just because you have a ton of money in the bank doesn't mean that you're happy, and it certainly doesn't mean that you're content. Because I've met a lot of very, very wealthy people who are just fucking miserable because money then becomes an issue. It becomes a problem. They don't want to go back. There's certain things they have to maintain. There's expectations upon them. So you need to pick your poison. You kind of need to know what your perfect looks like.
Yeah. I mean, look, I feel that some of the old school big money makers where they've got a lot of assets, they're asset rich and they're playing catch up with cash flow. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like they're the ones that are super stressed out. But I feel that now we have this ability to, when people say build a power team and build this incredible team around you to build a big business, and you need experts and stuff like this. I totally agree with that. But What I find exciting now, and what we'll come on to, is that the making of money, that the making of a business and cash flowing more, because cash flow is king. I don't think anyone can ever argue with that. If you've got big amounts of money coming through, regardless of whether you're paying tax, you still got big amounts coming through. It's as long as you can keep that expenditure down. We are
Mm-hmm.
in a time right now where, quite frankly, look, a phone and a laptop, you can do so much. You can leverage all the free resources. And when you build a power team of freelancers, I'm not even on about building a team of people that are on a contract, freelancers. Like right now, I've got my thumbnail editor doing yours and Andrew's thumbnail. You know, I've got two editors as well for editing now, and got the videographer. Like, these are all freelancers. And you can scale your business really quickly where your cash flow comes in, which is sustainable, and you can bring in amounts that you never thought were possible. Yes, it's a process, but we are in that day and age where if you want to earn more money, it's on the table.
100%, mate. Like literally,
The table.
if someone said to me 7 years, 8 years ago, when I was still in Canary Wharf, that, oh, Pete, you're going to leave here one day and you're just going to start a YouTube channel and you're going to earn consistently over £100,000 a year, I'd be like, no freaking way. Like, get out of it. But dude, like, this is the world that we live in now. And it's like, you can earn a lot of money doing something that you really, really, really enjoy. That's just the reality. I recorded a podcast this morning with a consumer psychologist. Fascinating conversation around the fact that in 2024, people are more concerned about trust and control when they're interfacing with people, not brands, people. And brands are in trouble because of this, because some people would rather interface with an influencer to buy a product or a service rather than go into a brand who they don't have any trust in and feel like, okay, we don't really know how to connect with you. At least with me and with you, they could go and watch TikToks and YouTube videos and get a sense of the person, right?
Yeah.
Be like, oh, I feel like I can relate to this person. He's my kind of guy. Like, if you take that into consideration in terms of the possibilities moving forward, the world isn't going to be about big brands anymore. It's going to be about the individual people who can connect on a message, who are authentic, that people trust, and people feel I equip them with the ability to have control over the choices that they make.
Yeah.
It's the reason why brands will pay me thousands, tens of thousands of pounds to do a campaign for them.
Yeah.
And I'm very careful with who I select because I know that I have trust of my people, of my audience, to give them the control and the education to make a good choice. But that's only possible because at the end of the day, I picked up a YouTube course at the end of 2019 and went, fuck it. Let's record the first video, even though I was scared to death. No one was going to like me. People would take the piss. You know, mate, we're in a completely different world right now.
We are. And it's exciting as well. Like, hearing you talk about it, obviously I can relate to my journey as well. But that's the thing, you become the voice of the people. I've said this before, is that you build the trust, you build the credibility. If you're solving frustrations, solving problems, if you can resonate with people, and it all starts with, you're not going to make money in the beginning. I think that's the hardest part for some people to go, I really want to do it. But so you're telling me for the first year, possibly 2 years, maximum 3 years, I might not earn a penny. That's correct. Well, and I've still got to show up every single day and do this and keep adding value, and I'm not getting anything in return. Yes.
Yep. But that comes back to the plan. You need to have a plan.
So, if you
like,
society has one for you.
Right. Because like for me, like I made no money that first year, like $0 in 2020, nothing. And I went from zero money through 2020 to 2021 doing 120,000. It's nuts.
Yeah.
That's from zero. And that's a year of just like videos, every 2 videos a week, just live Q&As, putting value out there, to all of a sudden light bulb goes off and just the floodgates come in. It's crazy the way it happened, mate. Then obviously you're running a business, so it's all about consistency and making sure that you're able to give more and more value, and that can be hard. It's not easy, but you at least are the master of your own destiny and the captain of your own ship. And there is no amount of money that you could offer me to exchange that for going back to an employed role. No, thank you.
No. And I'm going to quote 3 things here again. You can design your life or you get assigned one. We just said you can make a plan or society has one for you. You can position yourself in the market or the market will position you. And I think those are 2 decisions every conscious adult has to make at some point. Is you go, I have all the resources at my fingertips. Most of it is free. I now just have a decision. And that's it. And the decision will be backed by, what's your discipline like? What's your reason why? What's your motivation? What's your plan? Can you stick with it? and again, who you're hanging around with. Because look, making money isn't easy. And for anyone watching, we're not saying making money is easy, and starting a business is incredibly hard. But I think that's the other thing to offer some advice is when you start a business and you make a plan, there's making a plan and then there's overthinking and procrastinating. You make a plan, mitigate and calculate the risks, and then execute it and learn and evolve along the way. And that's something that never ends, does it? That you are constantly jumping hurdles, learning from mistakes. You can't have the perfect plan, though, can you?
No, you can't. And I think it's really, really important that we actually speak about this as well, because I think, and to be honest, I fall into this trap as well. And that's because when I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect. I think that today, a lot of people will start in social media for the wrong reasons. Want to make money immediately, not going to happen unless you're very, very lucky. But also, I think people also obsess with you have to have a huge following, which to a certain extent is true. And I think I'm a really good example in comparison to you. My followership comparison to yours is isn't as big. I'm small compared to your scale of following, especially across TikTok and some of the other platforms that you're on. But that doesn't mean that you can't build something that is sustainable and profitable.
Yeah.
But the key thing is that, and this is one thing that I always struggle with, is as you go on the journey, your plan is going to change. And the things that you might have to do will change. Your strategy, your approach to things will have to change. That's always going to be a steady, consistent factor within it. And you have to be willing to make those changes as you go along. But I think going into it with the mindset of like, this is the one thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to make a lot of money doing it, you're probably setting yourself up for success. You need to know how you're going to begin, but you have to be flexible in terms of, if the market says one thing and that's where you're leading, you adapt to that market and you try. But the important thing is making sure that you provide value in whatever shape or format that you're delivering, making sure that you're providing value.
I hear Chris William and Gary Vee have just done a podcast, which I heard was excellent. So I'm going to check that one out because that's all around being value driven. And I know it's a word that's overused, but it is true. Unless you are solving someone's problem or you are providing information that can benefit someone else, people don't tend to listen. So when you start this content creation journey, and I think wording's important, mate. Like we hear the word social media. When I hear social media, the first thing that comes to my mind is vanity, highlight reel, perfect lifestyle. But really, it's a window shop for your presence, your brand, your message, right? Your voice. And that's like across all the social media platforms. So I talk about commercializing yourself. When you make the plan and you start on a platform, don't be disheartened that you've got to do so much front end work, but imagine working with brands 12 months down the line, just like you. Did I think that I'd be charging thousands of pounds to do a 60-second video on TikTok? I kind of believed that it was possible and I had friends that were doing it, but I never thought that it would happen so quick. I did it in
Mm-hmm.
pretty quick time. But then to someone that says, well, Aaron, you said the word quick. And I'd be like, well, let me counter that with the fact that from day dot, I was doing 5 pieces of high quality content from the get-go. And I did that every day without being paid for 6-7 months until I got my first brand deal. So, you're talking about, as we say, that in the moment, well, it's easy for you to say that. No, no, no. Have you seen what I've done over, have you watched the 1,200
Mm-hmm.
videos that I've done today? So it is a process, but like you said, like you learn, you make mistakes, you evolve, it never ends. And I think also just to dive into what you said as well around making a plan, but maybe running it by quarters. Like don't get too far ahead. I think if we look back, look what the pandemic taught us. Everyone has like a 5-10 year plan. Boom, pandemic comes along and it's like game over.
Mm-hmm.
You've
Gone.
changed.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon? How do you plan it? I always kind of think, where do I want to be in 2-3 years? I don't really go beyond that. I've got to be honest.
To be honest, so let me just go back to the beginning. So I started YouTube in 2020, and my plan was very, very simple. So I knew that I wasn't going to make any money at all for the first year. I was prepared for that. So financially, I was also prepared for that. So I made sure I had money set aside to make sure I could really give it a good run for 12 months. But my overall plan was, okay, so YouTube is a free platform. People come and watch my videos. They'll get a lot of value for free. Hopefully then my followership then starts to grow. The viewership will start to grow. The podcast will start to grow, all that kind of stuff. And in my head, I was like, okay, how do I keep the content free for the people for as long as possible? So from the get-go, my strategy has always been, right, I need to get to a point where I can actually work with brands, where brands will pay me and sponsor me so that I can continue to create content for free to people. That has always been the plan. And that's been something that I've stayed true to. And this is my 4th year now. Now, people say that I leave money on the table because I don't really sell products per se. I do coaching here and there. There might be a few guides here and there, but I make a lot of stuff available for free. But that has always been the plan. So my business plan at the moment is, okay, how do I maybe turn that on the head so I don't leave as much on the table? For me, I have a yearly plan, but I also have like kind of like monthly kind of like milestones that I try and make sure that I kind of track as closely as I can. But I'm not focusing necessarily on, this is one thing that I have learned on YouTube. It's not necessarily about subscribers necessarily, and it's not about subscriber count. What I'm looking for, because I've just recently launched something called financial audits. That's been in the plan now for 2-3 months. So the idea with that is I want to grow that line of content, and views are going to be important because that's how I monetize. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but more importantly, paying attention to what do people get from it in the comments.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And so for that stream of content where I have a plan, that's monthly. That's 1 episode a month. We spend the time, sit down with someone, really dissect their finances in a supportive, coaching way. But ultimately, when it goes out, yes, views are important, but what are we hearing in the comments? Because if people are saying, this is really helpful, it helped me do this, that right there is the golden ticket. That for me is, valuable.
Well, making money, really, if we look at it and we break down any business, what does it come from? Listening, right? It's listening to what your audience, your potential customers are saying. And I think that's where some people go wrong, is they're saying, I'm not making any money. And then you might ask someone a simple question, okay, how many comments have you replied to? Or better still, how many comments have you had? And what are the common themes that come up? I think that's the other thing, is when people start to talk about things or they're trying to make money from a certain social media platform, is they're not listening enough to actually what is needed. And I think just a bit of a business advice, and Pete, get your thoughts on it, is when starting a business and the conversations that I have with people, there are too many businesses being started from the want and the desire of the business owner. I would love to start this business because I really like it. That's great, but the market might not need it. That's the God's honest truth. And I think that's the other thing, is just being quite acute with your listening and actually saying, is it needed? And am I being asked the right questions? I mean, what's your thoughts about that? Like listening carefully and actually, because attention is the biggest asset right now, but engagement to your answers for your business.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, for me, if you're starting a business and it's all about you and potentially ego sat behind that, you're starting off on the wrong foot. You just can't. So the whole reason why I started doing what I do is so I could have conversations with people that I wish someone had with me when I was 18, 19 years old. And that came from the fact that I picked up so much stuff. I was like, I wish someone told me this. So I'm thinking, okay, right, would people actually listen if I talked about investing, money topics? Would they actually listen? So in 2019, for a year, and I was probably ahead of the game here, I did 60-second videos Instagram every single day for 365 days just to test it. Would people pay attention, or would they just completely ignore it? Testing it told me, actually, people are paying attention. So when I started the YouTube in 2020, I knew people are paying attention. There's only so much I can fit in short form, 60 seconds. So now I'm going to go long form, which built the YouTube channel, really. And my YouTube channel isn't the biggest one out there, but I'm happy with the community that I built. And I think you have to be mindful of, what do people struggle with? How are you going to solve their problems? If they want to get a mortgage, how do you help them? How do you make it easy for them to understand what the process is and things that they need to do? That's how I approached it.
Yeah. And I just want to say to anyone who's watching up until this point, all of these are free platforms. This is the other thing you have to talk about. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of it is free to start. But you have to be committed to the front end work. This is the thing that defines someone who can monetize and make money, is the commitment to see something through without being bloody paid for the first year, 2, 3, 4 years. And the same when I get asked all the time, Pete, Aaron, I want to join your free webinar, or I want to learn how to escape my job. I've got to get out now. It's not going to happen. I got, it's just not going to happen. Go get another job where no one knows you, start some shift work, keep your head down, but you've got to carry on building your business. You've got to work through the weekends. You've got to be willing to sleep less, put more time in, not take profits so that you can float this business, keep it very liquid. And I feel that's at the point when you have that conversation with someone, you see it in their eyes. You have a lot of one-to-one conversations. I have a lot of one-to-one conversations. And when I'm on Zoom like this, Pete, and I'll turn around and I'll give the reality and I'll go, this is probably going to be about a 3-year journey and it's going to be tough. And I go, do you believe in yourself? Are you up for 3 years? Can you take no money for 3 years at your business, but sleep less and put more work in? They go, yeah, 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 I'll do that. And I'm going,
No, you don't mean it.
yeah, yeah,
You could
all
tell
right,
they don't
Boris.
mean it. Yeah,
I'm going,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but that's what it is, isn't it? It's that front end work. And I feel that if we can push through that barrier, it's like in the gym, you have no idea how much a human is capable of. Isn't it
You're
funny?
right.
I want to throw something at you, Pete. This is a great sort of like breakdown, abbreviation, acronym, whatever you want to call it. Anyone that goes to the gym, right? And I find this quite fascinating. The psychology behind it is that obviously it takes consistency to change your body, to change your mindset, to get in a better physical health. Is that when you go into the gym, people go in with a plan of, right, I'm going to do 3 sets of 15 reps. And that 15 reps, you get to 15 reps, you got another 10 in you. You got another 10 in you. But and pushing past and doing that extra 10 till failure, just when you cannot get that bar up and you get that squeeze. And that's when on that 25th rep, you have torn the
That's
fiber
the limit.
to
Yeah.
shit. And that is the growth. And when you come in for that gym pump the next day, you got the striations because you pushed the extra 10. And I feel like we have that capability in the real world, but we don't. Why do we not, do you think?
Because I think we just don't know the limitations. We don't know what we're capable of. I think one of the places and times that you're going to learn the most about yourself is when things are fucking hard. There was a parable that says that, it effectively said that pussies are born in times of fucking affluence and success. That's all it does. It just you're a pussy because you don't have any adversity. You've not had any struggles. You haven't had anything that you've really tested you. So you don't know what your limits are. You're quite happy to be like, oh, that's a little too much, son. I'm just going to sidestep this and just not even bother with it. Like through adversity, that's where you learn. That's where you know this is what I'm capable of, or I've never done this before, but it needs to be done and I'm going to fucking do it.
Yeah.
And unless you've been to that point, you're never going to learn. You're never going to know that about yourself. And that's why, sometimes when you look at, I look at my time in Canary Wharf. Why did they hire me? I didn't have a university degree, so I shouldn't even have been there. But why did they hire me? Because I don't take no for an answer. You can tell me no, I'm coming back next week. I'm coming back next week with a different angle and be like, hey, I know we spoke last week, but by the way, did you know? And
Yeah.
that's why they hired me. And I was very, very good at my job.
Yeah.
But that's because, hey, listen, for me, what Canary Wharf represented was a ticket to get on the poverty ladder, to do things I'd never done, bearing in mind I've been homeless. Like, I never should have been there. In Canary Wharf, are you freaking mad? Canada Square, 50th floor. Like, are you crazy? I'm there with like stockbrokers and rich fuckers. There was a guy called Tom, posh twat, posh twat. This guy couldn't tie his own suit fucking shoelaces. But and you're like, why are you here? Like, and then you start to realize, hang on a second, these people that you thought are better than you when you first arrive, I've got more about me than all of you combined. And then, for my background, you start thinking, hang on a second, if I just apply myself here, I can fucking slaughter all of these dudes. But
Yeah.
you don't know that about yourself until you get there, until you push yourself to that point where you can have that realization. And I think sometimes we're just so conditioned not to put our head above the parapet, not to test that boundary, just to be like, it looks hard that maybe I just won't even bother. Like the growth happens when you push yourself.
Dude, I love it. Do you remember I used to have the office in Berkeley Square House where I think maybe that was the first time
That was the first time we met. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I had that little office in there, and it was only it was classed as like a 4-man office, right? And I had that for a while. And when I first got that office, I was like, I don't feel right here. Like I don't come from this. And everyone in there is very toffee, and they're going for the cigar and the Winston
Yeah.
after all this lot and the Romeo, and they're going into Novikov straight away. And I used to feel out of place. But just like you said, which is why I'm smiling, I soon realized, oh, I've got more game. Like I'm pushing this to limits. Like they're comfortable in their equities and their venture capitalists and all this lot. And I thought, do you know what? I got more on my horizon. Like there's more to be had here. And actually, that feeling of, do I belong here? Yeah, at the beginning, you're kind of like, this is new territory, but you soon realize there's no difference.
At the end of the day, mate, you carve out your own space in the environment that you find yourself in. I'll tell you the day that it changed for me. Bearing in mind that I'm new to this place, never been in Canary Wharf, walked around Canary Wharf for years, thinking if you work here, you fucking made it, right? And I was doing music. My mate lived in Canada Water, looking at Canary Wharf at night, thinking if I get here, and my manager called me in one day and she goes, listen, you have no idea how much people in this office look up to you. Because, mate, I was smashing it. I'm in the top one or two consistently every single week. I'm smashing it. So if I had a bad day and I was like, oh, I can't be fucking bothered, no one else did anything else. And this is completely unbeknownst to me. My manager calls me in and goes, listen, you need to be aware of how much people look up to you. If you have a bad day and they start slacking, it's your fault and I can't be picking up their slack. So please just be mindful. Okay, they look up to you, and I'm like, these posh twats look up to me, and it's like, hang on a second, no, I got some stuff going on here, and that was really the moment where I was like, hang on a second, I can really change everything if I've only been here for 6 months, and this is what happens. Like, where can I take it? And for me in Canary Wharf, I started off as a telephone boy, ended up in the executive team in 5 years,
Yeah.
five major promotions in 5 years. Like, it's huge, but it's all about mindset and application, discipline and focus.
So here's a funny thing. I've had these conversations many times where people have said to me, I make it, or they've said it in a braggy way, or I've been in a circle or in my old job or something like that. And people have gone, I'm making this company millions, or, I've, we just closed a deal for the company, we turned over whatever, or I made a sale for the company that did whatever, right? And they're all very chuffed about it. And you just kind of throw in there and you go, so why are you not doing that for your own company? And they're like, well, it's just, I've got bonuses here and they look after me. And no, 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 no. You were gloating. You've made this company 2, 3, 4 million. If you can make 2, 3, 4 million in this business model, why have you not opened up your own firm and you're doing that? And then they're like, well, it's because, and whatever. And then it comes down to the accountability. Look, if I had to ask you right now, a bit of blend of everything is the relationship with money to get a good one, to have better habits. What would you say your best piece of advice for someone listening up until this point around, maybe changing their habits, maybe bringing in more money, or that idea of starting the business to improve their financial situation? What's your sort of generic advice around the world that we're in to start making the steps to move towards a better financial future?
Yeah, sure. I think first and foremost, you can't get past the fact that we need to earn more money now, period. If you can earn more money, then the problem then becomes, or the balance to try and strike is, make sure that your outgoings don't decimate what you bring in. That's fundamentally true across everything. But I think making sure that your expenses don't decimate your income is where a lot of people struggle. And this is where it's all about really being attuned to what it is that you want to achieve and not just, blindly walking in the dark. Really, really sit down with yourself and understand, where do you want to be a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? If you want to extrapolate to 10, 15 years, you do that. But psychologically, we know from a behavioral point of view, it is extremely difficult for us as human beings to think that far into the future, even though it's there before you can even blink. It goes by so quickly. So really focus on what the immediate aspirations and goals that you want to achieve are, and be extremely clear on what they are. Not, I want to earn £50,000. Doing what? In what environment? Be really, really intrinsic. One of the things that I really believe in terms of, visualization is, if you can visualize it and make it so clear that you can see the detail, you can make it happen. So
Yeah.
being really specific. If you want to buy a house, where do you want to buy the house? How big is the house? Does it have a garden? Do you have a study? What are the colors of the drapes that you want in the house? Really be clear on it. Okay, so how much does this house actually cost? All right, so what does deposit actually translate to? Okay, so if the deposit is X amount and you've got 4 years to do it, how much do you need to save per year? How much do you need to save per month? That gives you a granular detail. Unless you've got that detail, you're never going to have real focus, and you're never going to have anything to apply the discipline to get you there. So that will be my fundamental thing. Really be clear on where you want to be. And it can be a difficult exercise, but if you do it and you're clear on it, it's probably one of the best things you'll ever do. And again, it's repeatable, because once you achieve that goal, you apply it to something else in the future. And the momentum that you make in actually achieving that goal is going to give you so much more confidence. You'll know that actually I can test my limits and I can overcome my limits as well.
Once you find the perfect repeatable week, you can just multiply it and scale it and scale it. That was spot on advice. And what I will do towards the end of this video, Pete and I have done another podcast most recently. That was really valuable. That was a great podcast. It was called Money Buys Happiness. And that will be somewhere on the screen towards the end of this podcast. Pete, well, dude, again, thank you so much for coming on, mate, and sharing
No
all
worries, mate.
your knowledge and your experience. And I know this goes down a treat and people love to listen to it on Spotify as well. But Pete, is there anything you want to sort of direct people to, or should I just include everything in the description as normal? But
Well, look, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube. If you just type in my name, you'll find me across most of the social media channels. I mean, I do a ton of stuff. Obviously, the content is all free. If people want to hire me for coaching, that's also fine. I have limited slots available for that. I do have a book that came out a year ago, which is a bestseller. I actually run a book club for that, which is a 6-week program. So you get all of the practical stuff that we talk about in the book, but we also have behavioral psychology that sits behind it as well. So that next cohort of the book club is going to be starting in June. If you want to go on a 6-week journey that will transform your finances with me being at the center of it, helping you, guiding you, coaching you, you want to join it. Trust me, it's worth the investment. The feedback from the first round has been absolutely amazing. I'm running a corporate session at the moment, which is 5 weeks. But the second cohort for individuals, we keep it to a limited number of 20 because we don't want the group to be big, we want it to be intimate, and you get some of my time every week. There are behavioral assessments. There's lots of guides, lots of downloadables. There's just a shed load of stuff. There's freebies in there. You get a membership to a budgeting app. There's tons of stuff in there. So if you want to join that, that will be on my website. Just check out the website.
awesome. I'll include all of that in the link description. Everyone who has watched up until now, or perhaps you're listening, thanks so much. I'm looking down at here, but actually the camera's there. Thanks so much. And like I said, towards the end of this video, somewhere around me will be Money Buys Happiness. Go check that out. It's an awesome podcast. Pete, thanks so much. And
No worries,
everyone,
mate.
see you all very soon.